Our caregivers are tremendous people. And I mean, without them, all the accolades we received in the past 7 years wouldn't be possible.
We give an opportunity for folks to not only make a wage, but we give them the opportunity to have purpose in their career.
With the influx of undocumented immigrants, there's got to be a lot of people that are be really quality caregivers within that. If there was some way of a pathway to vet people and train them and teach them the language and skill sets and all that, now we kind of have a built-in answer to our biggest problem.
Come on, somebody. It's another episode of Conversations from the Heart. I'm your host. My name is Glenn Leingang, and I serve as the Vice President of Franchise Development here at Touching Hearts at Home. And today, we got a guy that is a Cubs fan. He's an entrepreneur. He's a home care savant, and he loves life. And boy, let me tell you, he loves his golf. I'd like to introduce our guest today, John Cushing. John, how are you?
I'm great, Glenn. I'm really happy to be here. Hello, everyone. I'm a savant, I guess, idiot savant, perhaps is a better way of saying that. I think they'll get plenty of people that agree with me. But no, really happy to be here today.
We're delighted that you could join us. Let's start with this because I think it's important. Where do you see the long term, maybe this year, maybe the next few years? Very important. I want to get this out of the way. How do you feel about your Cubbies?
I am disappointed on how the second half of the season has gone because they were, tearing it up in the first half of the season and the run differential was amazing. And now that for the most part, the offense has gone cold. We've had a little bit of a resurgence lately in the last couple series, but catching Milwaukee is a pipe dream at this point. Charging into the wild card instead of limping in would be great. And then we can see what happens in the playoffs. And hopefully next year, they can add some arms and a little more pop and we'll be back in it.
Amen. I love it. I love the eternal optimism of all of our Cubs fans out there. The Astros are playing very well. That's just a side plug. We're peaking at the right time. I like what I see. But there's nothing like the friendly confines. And actually, Chicago holds a very special place in my heart.
Oh, why is that?
Well, one of my best friends lives there. Okay. I've been to Chicago many times. It actually reminds me a little bit, okay, of my hometown of New Orleans. Okay. Just New Orleans is on a much smaller scale. I believe we've played the Chicago Bears in a playoff game or two. Okay. I like some of the results. I will say that, but I digress. So John, for our folks at home, just tell everybody how you came in to becoming an owner of Touching Hearts at Home, and what has this process been like?
Well, first off, I'm extremely and eternally grateful that I did make that decision. So neither my business partner, Jeff Brick, nor myself came from a healthcare background whatsoever professionally. I was a manufacturer's rep for 30 years, representing consumer products companies and selling them to retailers. Retailers like national and regional, so Kohl's and Walgreens and Sears and Kmart and others, Shopko and what have you, Ace Hardware. But for many, many, many years, Sears and Kmart were my primary revenue producers. And it was quite obvious that they were going away and my wife and kids were not going away. So I had to figure out something in the latter parts of my career. Coincidentally, my business partner, Jeff Brick, who I previously mentioned, and going forward, we'll refer to as Jeff. He was a commodities trader at the Board of Trade. Open outcry on the floor. All that was going away. This is back in 2017. He knew he did do something different as well. He's 10 years younger than me, so he's got a little more runway ahead of him. So we started talking about different businesses to get into. And we just kind of, spitballed some things. Jeff and I have known each other for 16 years or so, coached our kids together. Kids went to the same local private Catholic grade school. He happened upon senior services. He's a very smart guy, valedictorian of his high school, went on to Harvard, where he played football and rugby. So, and then tell everybody he went to Harvard. That being said, he did all the research, landed upon senior services, did more research, I still had my business going, and he found Touching Hearts at Home, was really moved by their mission, told me all about it. And then he moved ahead with the paperwork and called me the night before he had to turn it in and said, my wife and I were sitting on the couch watching something. He called me. He said, so are you in? I'm doing this. And I just said, yeah, absolutely. And hung up the phone. And my wife's like, who was that? I said, it was Jeff. She said, about what? I said, oh, this business we're going to start, Touching Hearts at Home. I said, that's what we're going to do. And she's like, really? I'm like, yeah. So I did both parallel because it took us a better part of 8 months to get our license from the state of Illinois, unfortunately. As a result, though, they've shortened that process because a friend of ours was a state representative at the time. And we finally reached out to him to say, hey, Chris, this is taking forever. And he's like, I wish you would have told me. But that expedited it. And then they passed a bill to shorten the time it takes to get a business license in Illinois, because obviously they want businesses here in Illinois, especially now when they're leaving left and right. Yeah. So anyhow, that was it. So we got our license August 1st, 2018, just recently celebrated seventh year. It's been tremendous. We've met an amazing number of caregivers who were just selfless, walking angels, a tremendous amount of families and clients, obviously, that, I tell people, maybe selfishly, my two favorite parts of the business is sitting down and meeting a client and their family and learning about the situation and kind of getting a good feel for what they're looking for as far as care. And then, providing our caregivers providing an outstanding service and delivering a great product. And, no case is permanent. So at some point they may transition either in the facility or transition. We tend the services, and this is the salvage part, but that's where the people just really, oftentimes break down and thank us so much for everything we did. However, it's not myself nor Jeff, it's the caregivers. Mm-hmm. So that's it in a nutshell, basically.
Yeah. So you mentioned the caregivers a few times in that conversation. I read an interesting statistic. Actually, I think we talked about this at our last FAB meeting. By the way, John, thank you for serving as one of our franchise advisory board members.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. You guys are making a tremendous impact. As you know, our CEO, Todd Tremmel, is very big on communication and collaboration, and we take those meetings very serious. And I know I've enjoyed spending a little bit of time with you during the last one. But one thing that we discussed in our last meeting, I believe, was by the year 2030, we will be in America 8.2 million caregivers short of the actual demand. In the industry, it's referred to the silver tsunami. Tell me how you're preparing for that. What does that look like for your business? Are you overwhelmed? How do you get the most important piece, as you say, to this business, the angels, okay, using your term, to come on board with you, to stay with you, and also to provide the care that is so impactful in so many seniors' lives?
Excellent question. Excellent topic. A very serious one. How am I preparing personally? I'll be 64 in November. So by 2030, I'll be handpicking my own caregivers and keeping them on retainer until such time that I may need them. No, it's a various, and I tell clients all the time and families, it's a very serious situation ahead of us. The demand is just going to be so much greater than the supply. And with families, that generation having smaller families, and the kids are, in the old days, everybody stayed, grew up wherever, continue to raise their family wherever they grew up or nearby. And now they're scattered throughout the country. And so there's very little family infrastructure to care for the elderly. As you know, home care is not inexpensive by any means, but currently there's a great number of people who can afford private duty home care or through VA or long-term care insurance or whatever. And there will continue to be that big swath of people that can afford it. But then you're landing on a huge number of people who won't be able to afford it to the degree they need it. And then, what happens then? They can't have them on the streets. They don't want them on the Medicare rolls. Obviously, you don't want the facilities and hospitals overloaded. I think we're going to need some sort of government involvement. And I always kind of throw up my mouth a little bit when I think about that, but they're going to have to provide some sort of maybe stipend or something to families to offset some of the costs of private duty home care. I just don't financially see another way that's going to help that situation, or tax credits or something. So
there's a real major issue that all of us can see coming down the pipeline. Hopefully we get some legislation that can be passed, because when we look at this, in our last FAB meeting, it's sobering, because there's going to be potentially communities, cities. Listen, at the end of the day, 8.2 million people that this industry may not have the caregivers to serve these people. It's sobering because, it's what we do, but we need more great people. We need to figure out this, because at the end of the day, and we can only do what we can in our own communities, but we feel a responsibility to help mitigate that issue. And, I want to stay here just for a moment, if you don't mind, because I think you can provide
please. Yeah, absolutely.
Some incredible insights to this. But, when I think about the caregivers, think about, they go into a home for the first time, right? After you do the intake, they build a relationship. They serve someone in the fourth quarter of their life, in most cases, with excellence. They build a tremendous relationship. And then at some point, as life is, that person that we're serving or that they're serving passes on. And so they have to deal with not only the stress and the toil of doing the work, but there's also an emotional toil that goes into these angels, as you've referred to them as. How do you combat that? How do you just try to do the best that you can to care and understand the psychological side that these caregivers can go through?
Absolutely. And that's a great point. And, obviously, I think we do an excellent job of communicating not only with our clients and client families, but with our caregivers, because they are the heart and soul of Touching Hearts at Home, and making sure as they're working on, like you say, the fourth quarter, or, clients in hospice, or they know the end is near, making sure that they have everything they need as far as, tools and support and all that. And then reassuring them how thankful we are and the families are of their compassionate care for their loved ones. They're strong. They're extremely resilient. They've been through this many times. Very few times is it the first time, but recently we did have a young caregiver. It was her first time, and she, I reached out to her about what a great job she was doing. And she said it was such a rewarding experience to be able to go through that and care for someone who's actively dying. And she said it really prepared me for, my next case and what lies forward in her life and her career.
Wow. You brought up an interesting word there that the caregiver mentioned, rewarding. Oftentimes as we think about this business, we think about this industry, it can consume us because we're making a true impact on people's lives. And that absolutely matters. And we're making an impact on caregivers' lives and giving them the ability to grow within a company and achieve truly whatever they desire in their own life, right? But I guess my thought or question as it pertains to this, I've often thought that we give an opportunity for folks to not only make a wage, okay, but we give them the opportunity to have purpose in their career, rewarding. Tell me what that means to caregivers. Why is that important? And why should more people that may be sitting on the sidelines right now say, hey, come into this business. It may change your life. And by the way, you can make some money too.
Right. I tell people we have, various degrees of caregivers, skill sets, and types of caregivers. We've got live-in caregivers, and sometimes that's all they do. We have overnight caregivers that do 12-hour overnight shifts, and that's all they want to do because they have things they need to do during the day. We have, or they have family to care for. And then we have caregivers that are just looking for 12-hour shifts, on a daily look. This is how they pay their rent. This is how they feed their family, pay all the bills, and they're looking for 30, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And then we have the part-time mom caregiver I refer to. And that's, we have so many of those, and we get so many more from the word of mouth to their friends because they may work 12, 15, 18 hours a week. It's short hours, 4-hour shift. It's very flexible schedule, and it's extremely rewarding. I mean, they bond with these people who are at the beginning of care, right? So this is when they first start needing care. The family comes to the mom or dad and says, listen, we're not comfortable with you being alone all the time. We don't need somebody here all the time, but we need somebody to be with you, to assist you with the activities of daily living, at least maybe 3 days a week, just so we know you're safe and you're engaged and all that. And that's really, we get so many caregivers that take those cases who are, I guess, overwhelmed by how impacted they are, emotionally rewarded. Like the caregivers that do it for a living, they're kind of used to feeling good about what they're doing, right? And that they're making a difference. But it's the ones who just come into it without any, background and, help a little lady cross the street kind of thing. And they're just like, wow, I'm really glad I'm doing this because it's a purpose. So
Yeah,
hopefully that kind of shed light on your question.
no, absolutely. When we can provide an opportunity for folks to achieve the resources for whatever they desire in their own goals in life, but also tie that with purpose, man, that's incredible.
Right. Yeah. It's a grand slam. Getting back to the whole shortage of caregivers, the other thing, and this is not a political statement whatsoever, but, with the influx of, undocumented immigrants, whatever, and obviously there's real issues there and questions that have to be answered and things like that. But there's got to be a lot of people that are be really quality caregivers within that. And, in a country that's really going to need it. So, if there was some way of a pathway to, vet people and train them and teach them the language and the skill sets and all that, now we kind of have a built-in answer to our biggest problem. I don't have the answers to how to get there, but that's something that needs to be probably talked about as well.
Yeah, it's interesting not to go into too much detail about this, but I can tell you that there are firms that we've been contacted by that are out of the country now, but that literally train and provide working visas for caregivers. And so definitely something that we want to keep an eye on, something that, far above my pay grade, but certainly, obviously, we hope that, we can look at these things from a national perspective and realize that, listen, we've got a need that in 5 years, we're just way underserved for our own people. And we need to think through this and figure it out. I'm confident that our good folks on the Hill will see this and be proactive about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you see over the next 5 years to a decade in terms of not only the industry, but also touching hearts at home? Are you excited about the future? Just give me your thoughts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Renee Peterson, the founder, I think she started at 18 or 19 years ago. I don't know wonderful woman. It was my pleasure to have known her and worked with her. She had a vision and really launched it well. We've had some, there were some stalls as far as new franchise development, but thanks to yourself and Todd yourself, because he hired you, it's amazing what you guys have done and the energy that's been brought into the organization. I know the network to an owner is thrilled about the direction Touching Hearts at Home should be going. I can't say enough about, if somebody was interested in pursuing a small business, this is certainly the industry to get into. The barrier of entry is fairly low and it's extremely rewarding. Touching Hearts at Home, you guys have already added probably 20 locations since in the, 13 months that Todd's been around. And it's truly amazing. And what's even more impressive is that they're the right people for the business that are coming in. Too often in any kind of franchise, people come in hoping that it's going to, spit out cash and they won't have to, they can be passive about it. That's not how you succeed in this business. You have to be boots on the ground. I always tell people, I think with partners, it makes it a whole lot easier, and the ramp up is faster because you can, one person could be recruiting caregivers, the other one trying to recruit, develop referral sources. And obviously there's a split of the money, but business grows more quickly. And I think there's a lot of agencies within our network that have grown quickly because it's a two-person animal at the top. Jeff and I are great friends. I think we've had two minor disagreements in 7 years. We each have our roles, but we're very, very excited about the future and the team that Todd has put in place, along with Ryan and Andrew, Ramona, yourself, Caitlin, Edward, and Catherine, am I right?
Kimberly.
Oh, Kimberly. Okay. Yeah. Very, very excited about the future. Looking forward to, the conference in October. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's going to be energetic. I know all of us, Todd spearheading it, obviously, along with the FAB and getting our franchise advisory board, getting input from you guys and from other franchisees. We feel like we got a great agenda. Todd's bringing in some great speakers. And just for me, it's about getting energy from you guys. Like that's what gets me fired up. Tell me, you mentioned Renee. By the way, I had the opportunity last week to meet Renee in person. And by the way,
wonderful.
Yeah. We get to serve her vision, but to meet her in person, I've said this before, but she has that it factor. I can't put my finger on it.
And she lights up a room for sure.
Yes. Yes. And you can't teach that, but when you have it, you got to still be willing to use it. And clearly she does. And you mentioned Ryan and Andrew, when we talk about support, it's in our DNA. Ryan and Andrew are with us every single day in the barracks, if you will, fighting a good fight. And then everything, I believe, always starts with leadership and ends with leadership. And I couldn't be, for lack of a better word, more proud of Todd and excited about what we're building together, but also just the way he truly does care about doing this the right way and bringing in the right people, because we have a culture and we got to protect the culture. We just don't let anybody come in here that has $50,000 to write a check.
Right.
You guys have built something, and I've seen firsthand the way that, the longer tenured franchisees respond and communicate with one another. It's almost like a family.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to, meeting future members of our family in Nashville, because all the, new franchisees that will be there that I haven't met, had the pleasure to meet, and really looking forward to that. And again, welcoming them with open arms and, adding them to our group chats and whatnot.
Yeah. So John, I got to tell you, one of the things that, makes my job such a joy is the fact that the whole and Todd told me this before I came on board, but he just raved about the network and how you guys are like, look, we want to grow this thing. We just want the right people at the table. And I love this because the foundation has been set. The table of the foundation is healthy. It's strong, on the vision and leadership of Renee, to her sons, to the transitions, to the amazing network of people that we have that have bought in and said, hey, we can expand the table. We got more room at the table.
Right. Put a few more leaves in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. We're going to put some more damn leaves in that table. I love that. Tell me about your family, John.
My lovely wife, Jane, and I, we met blind date later in life. I was 39 and she was 35. And we married about about 16 months after we'd met, November 2002, and welcomed our first son, Dylan, in March of 2004. He is now a senior at the University of Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton Flyers.
Yeah, go Flyers. And then our younger son, Colin, is a sophomore at the University of Illinois in Champaign. So that's the family. And then we have our dog, Ivy, mini golden doodle. and she is 8 years old and wonderful. The daughter my wife never had. So
That's amazing. I didn't know this, and I love doing these things because I learn something every time. John, we have a mini doodle as well, and ours is a boy, and he's 7. So it's funny.
yeah, yeah.
I love that. Go ahead.
I said they're amazing because we never had a dog in our life. I was a paper boy for about 14 years growing up, and no lie, started awfully young. And dogs and I were natural, adversaries. And she's just incredible. So we're blessed to have gotten her. So every day is a blessing. And then my work family, I want to talk about, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So Jeff and I really were pretty much on our own doing the whole thing so we started in 2018 up until 2021. For 3 years, we just did it. We did everything. We were spinning plates and juggling flaming knives because we had grown quite a bit. We were well beyond the path of where you're supposed to have hired somebody, So we did, I think it was July, former caregiver, she just worked weekends at a live-in case for us, and she had a regular job during the week. Anyhow, that business, they transitioned, they moved offices, so she was no longer employed by them. And we talked to her about coming inside and being our hiring manager, among other things at the time, because we're going so many different ways. So her name is Sharon Rakes, and she is just amazing. She does an incredible job as hiring manager. She has learned so much over the past 4 years. Her spidey senses are honed now. In the beginning, she thought every applicant was just going to be spectacular and so excited. And then, 7 out of 10 don't show up for the interview, things like that. So we bought her rose-colored glasses at one point in time. And, but she is truly amazing. And she's really, what did I tell? I was saying, Sharon is the most incredible person I've ever met. I was telling somebody that the other day. And the person I wasn't telling it to was my wife, as the story goes. And she agreed. I mean, Sharon is just a ray of sunshine. So Sharon was the first hire. And then we have Julie Butte. Julie, her older son played baseball and basketball with my son. So we knew each other well. She came to us, called me one day. I think, the kids were in high school or whatever, and she was a little, bored. She's like, what about being a caregiver? So she worked as a caregiver, a part-time mom caregiver for us for a couple of years with a few different clients who adored her. And it was really, she loved it very much so. Then she had to kind of take a step back because of kids' activities and things like that. And then as we were growing, I said to Jeff one day, I said, I wonder if Julie would be interested in working in the office just part-time. And so I reached out. She's like, oh my gosh, I was going to reach out to you because, now I have more time on my hands. And I said, what we'd like to do is have you come in and basically work our compliance. So she works 3 days a week, 5 hours a day, and she's in charge of making sure our client files are up to date and, everything is there. Once the survey comes from the Illinois Department of Public Health, our caregiver files that she follows up, make sure everybody's training is being completed on time. Their license renewals, insurance cards, all those things that need to be done, the minutia, but you have to have it done. Checking the IDPH rolls, all that. And then ultimately became responsible also for our social media. And she works with Caitlin and they do a great job. Julie can do anything. And we've handed her a lot of, projects and tasks over the years, and she just does a great time. And then a year ago, August, we hired Diana Bannigan. Because I said to Jeff, we have to get a scheduler. It was just overwhelming. I mean, we were at, a couple thousand hours a week, and we really didn't have a scheduler. It was Jeff or myself, trying to figure it out, or Sharon at the time. And I'm like, we have to get a scheduler. And I said, and we have to have somebody. I'm only hiring someone who has done this before. Because if we hire somebody who really thinks they want to be a scheduler and teach them the ropes and get them trained up and coached up, once they figure out what kind of job it is, they're going to quit. Because you have to have the intestinal fortitude to deal with all the things that are coming at you between family emergencies, caregiver call-offs, new client startups, same day startups, things like that. You have to be extremely versatile and be able to multitask constantly. So we put an ad out and got a couple of, a lot of applicants, but two really stood out in my mind, and Diana being one of them. And so I called her. We spoke for quite a while. She was actually running an agency in a local nearby town for the owner who was somewhat passive. He would check in only to criticize, things like that. She did everything. In her conversation with me, and when I asked why she wanted to leave, she said, she goes, I love my job. I love this industry. I just want to be appreciated, and I don't feel I'm appreciated. And I said, Diana, whether you feel we're a good fit for you, I will find you a good fit elsewhere if you don't feel we're a good fit for you, because you will be appreciated. Because it's a very collaborative business, and there are other agency owners around, non-touching hearts, that we're become friendly with, that I would say, hey, listen, if she said, no, this is too far of a drive, or no, this or that, I would gladly refer him to that. And she's been a godsend. She has changed our lives considerably, just does everything, handles it without, any difficulty whatsoever, turns on a dime for things, keeps a journal of notes that, for documentation and whatever. And she just is such a great, great addition to our team. And beyond all that, the three ladies get together, get along famously well. So our office environment, because it was very, that was a big thing about our quote unquote culture, which initially was just Jeff and I. So you can imagine our culture was they're locker roomish, right? Because it was just Jeff and I. And then adding Sharon, who's got a great attitude, and we got along great. We already knew her. So we knew she'd be a good fit. And Julie, we knew she'd be a good fit. But, coming in with Diana, it was kind of all right, is this going to kind of change everything? And not one bit. I should say it changed it for the better. But from a culture standpoint, she fit right in. So we're very fortunate. And we have one more sort of member of our team, a gentleman named Scott Hunter, who shares the office with us. He's got a desk in there and he comes in. But Scotty's been a good friend of Jeff and I for a long time. Our kids all know each other. So Scotty will insert himself every now and then with either some comic relief or some IT help, or just, joining the conversation. So it's a very wonderful office environment.
Sounds like he's a great utility player.
Yes. A good sounding board as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so important. John,
they're a great buddy. So, Elmhurst buddy. Yeah.
Yeah. What better? One thing that as we do conversations from the heart with some of our amazing owners and other folks as well, different walks of life, one thing that I've heard that has been a constant theme, and we don't even talk about these podcasts beforehand. They're organic, right?
Yeah.
Because I want you to get your story out, whatever that may be. But one thing that is a common theme and thread from our owners that are outstanding is there's a true understanding and desire to care for others in the sense of not only the people that we're serving, but the team members. When you made that comment about, listen, if we're not a good fit for you, you should be appreciated and I will find you someone else. That is a common theme it's not always about our mission. It's about building other people up and allowing them to get to where they want to be too. And I got to tell you, from Chris Green, Ryan Fensler, Haley Johnson, Kelly George, yourself, it's just this resounding theme that I think is special, that I don't want to see fall through the cracks, because it's part of why we are who we are.
Right. Absolutely. And I obviously have mentioned them a couple of times, but the fact that Jeff and I are such close friends, really makes things so much easier as well, because there'll be times, we used to joke in the early days, like when we, walk out of the office on Friday afternoon, we'd just say, okay, I'll talk to you Monday, which we knew that was not the case. We'd be talking, 15 minutes later and all throughout Saturday and Sunday or whatever. And now with the addition of the team, and especially Diana, we can, get a little more free time, things like that. But we'll have many times where, like if Jeff was away somewhere, or myself, we have a conversation after, one of us returns. We'll talk all about where we were, what we did on the weekend, whatever this and that, and then ultimately dovetail into whatever business stuff was going on. So it's still friendship first, and business second. And, I can't speak highly enough about that because it makes coming in a pleasure. And, he does all the background stuff, the back office stuff. He does the billing and payroll and making sure all the accounting and does all that, so, and which is great with his financial background. So yeah, we make our skill sets match up pretty well, the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, it's so important. I haven't had the privilege of meeting Jeff yet, but I certainly, when I do, I'm sure I will at some point.
Yeah.
Definitely want to ask him about his career at Harvard.
Yeah.
His football career. But no, that's really cool. And, Todd always says this when he called me, when he took over as CEO, he said, Glenn, and actually he told me this 2 to 3 years before this. He said, Glenn, I'm at a stage in my life where I want to do meaningful work. And I also want to do it with the people that I want to do it with. That's so important. I mean, we spend so much of our time together. You talk about you and Jeff's relationship.
Right.
But our whole team, and, obviously we can't be best friends with everyone. There's only so much time. But those relationships are so vital. We spend so much time and are passionate about doing purposeful work. Hey, let's do it together with people that we like. And so that's, I love to hear that. And thank you for honoring Jeff. It tells me a lot about you as well.
Well, no, but deservedly so.
Yeah. So let's conclude with this. I want to give you just the full platform I'm going to tee you up, which is something that I know you love to do. You guys won a pretty prestigious award in 2024. And I want to just give you the opportunity there in Elmhurst. You were recognized as the best of 2024 for in-home healthcare services. What does that mean to you? How did it come about? And I just want to give you the floor, whatever you want to talk about.
Thanks so much for giving us that shout out. Well, what it means is our caregivers are tremendous people. And I mean, without them, all the accolades we've received in the past 7 years wouldn't be possible. We just got in the last 2 days our 72nd, 73rd 5-star Google review. And actually, if you look at our other location, probably now you're looking at 88 5-star Google reviews. And, those are all genuine, 100%. When we know the client was, well served and the family was extremely happy at a certain point in time, we'll say, listen, if you're so inclined, and they're like, absolutely. How do I do it? Send me the information. So, and those accolades led to the best of home care 2024 within Elmhurst. But obviously we serve the greater Chicagoland area, but I counted not too long ago, I think we've served over 200 different families in Elmhurst in 7 years. We have it helps that we, raise our kids here, part of the community, very strong part of the community through coaching and charitable work and things like that. Jeff's wife, Katie, is instrumental. She's got a whole running program. So she's very involved in the cities. She's now teaching track, I believe, and cross country. She's coaching over at one of the local private high schools that their son Will attended. So we're very involved in the community, which then obviously, kind of springs us into top of mind when people are looking for care for their loved ones in the area. So that's great.
Absolutely. Well, I truly never know how these are going to go. I mean that. I don't come into it with a preconceived notion. I really like to do this organically, and that's why we call this Conversations from the Heart. If I'm being transparent, I would have thought this one was going to be much more of a joking type atmosphere, a lot of fun.
We can redo it. We can run it back. I'll be happy.
Listen to me, brother. You gave us exactly what I think we needed to talk about today, and it just happened organically. I love that. My name is Glenn Leingang, and it is an honor to once again bring you an episode of Conversations from the Heart. I'd like to thank our guest from Elmhurst, Illinois, John Cushing. I'd like to also give a shout out to his partner, Mr. Burke. I am very confident that they're going to continue on in a great relationship, that the caregivers, they're going to come in a bountiful manner, and this firm in Elmhurst and beyond will continue to grow and serve people. And we're going to address this as best we can, this shortage of the most important people, perhaps in the world. Okay. Those people that are caring for other folks in the fourth quarter of their life. John Cushing, you are amazing. I look forward to building our relationship together, and I mean that. Thank you
And
for
thank
your
you very
time.
much for having me. I'm honored to be here. So, and you're doing great work, and look forward to seeing you in Nashville in October, Glenn.
Look very much forward to it, my friend.
All right. Be well.
Thank you.